welcome to ThinkTech Hawaii BizEd Spotlight. My name is Alice Li Hagan. My guest today is Joy Barua. He's the Director of Community Benefit and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. He has spent 2 decades in nonprofit health and education here in Hawaii. Welcome, Joy.
Aloha. Glad to be here.
Well, I know I spoke to you about 2 months ago about your work at Kaiser Permanente. So tell me some of your responsibilities, please.
Sure. I have the distinct privilege of being, as the Director of Community Benefit and Health Policy, supporting our social mission and looking at ways in which we can promote community health, work with a broad area of stakeholders, really exciting work to see how we can make Hawaii a better place to live, work, learn, and play.
Well, when you say social mission, can you tell us what that really means?
Sure. Most organizations that tend to have a core mission as well as a social mission to advance and support community efforts. So at Kaiser Permanente, our core mission is to provide the best affordable, high-quality care for the benefit of our members, but we also do so being mindful of the communities we serve. So, our social mission is actually one that is not separate from our core mission, but rather very much part of our core mission DNA.
Okay, because I know that with other organizations, especially private organizations, some of the banks here, they also have their foundations. So I presume they will be very different from what you say are their core missions then. Tell us some of the things that, maybe let me go back. Producer, can I ask you to show me the first image? And Joy, maybe you can first tell us about, now I know Kaiser Permanente is one of the largest integrated health systems here, but for the audience benefit, maybe you can tell us briefly what that means.
Sure. Kaiser Permanente, when we talk about being an integrated system, what we're essentially referring to is the fact that everything is housed under one roof, whether it be providing the best care or by our physicians, having hospitals, the capacity, the infrastructure, and then also having the ability to provide health plans. So when you have all of that, everything from providing care, helping people, having information all under one roof, really we truly represent what we refer to as the integrated model, or the integrated healthcare system.
Well, I used to be a Kaiser Permanente member, and it was amazing. I really enjoyed working with my primary care provider. But coming back to the community benefits, I know we were just trying to show the audience I guess the process, some of the long-term plan that you have in terms of developing community benefits. And maybe, producer, if you could show us slide 2, maybe that would be a better one to share with the audience. If you can tell us a little bit about how you do these, I guess, advocacy work and develop all these community benefits programs.
Sure. So under the umbrella of community benefit, our social mission work, there's a lot we do, and they span the gamut of everything from, you can imagine, from care, improving population health, all the way upstream prevention and looking at promoting public health. And so within that work, there's a lot we do, and we try to organize the effort under people, policy, and place-based efforts. So we try to look at population-facing health disparities, and we look at addressing those. We look at ways in which, the need for policy interventions, whether it be promoting healthier meals in schools, better wellness policies, making our roads safer, or even place-based efforts, looking at how do we improve the environments at home, our communities, so that our communities, our places, are able to support thriving population and healthy population.
Now, you mentioned quite a few things there, schools, place. So maybe would you like to tell us a program or some of the programs that you're really proud of at Kaiser? And you've been at Kaiser at this position for 4 years. So yeah, maybe if you can tell us something that you're really proud of.
Sure. that would be a tough question to answer only because there's so much that we do. But if I were to just pick a quick few that come to mind, we helped establish Hawaii's first Food Policy Council, as well as also supported with the launch of recently Hawaii's first Public Health Institute. And in particular, the Public Health Institute is very important, as it is so in other states, to help bring in public funding to improve health in communities through a wide area of different ways. Also particularly proud of our efforts in schools, working with our educators, working with Hawaii schools to look at how do we promote wellness in schools, whether it's looking at nutrition and how we access funding, integrating wellness guidelines, promoting more physical activity in schools. In fact, one quick example I want to share along those lines is the fact that each year, Kaiser Permanente supports, in partnership with community organizations and stakeholders, and just the community at large, Hawaii 5210 Keiki Run, which is the largest healthy fundraising event in the entire state, where we have over 100 schools participate, and the funds that are generated support wellness in schools.
So is that the video that, one of the videos that you sent me? Maybe I can share that with the audience right now. Producer, could you run the first video with the Keiki, I guess it's the running event, please?
Yeah, grooving, Paul, that's right. As you can see behind me, some kind of hip-hop dance going on. Zumba's going to be up on stage next. This is all the warm-up for today's Keiki Run, the Let's Go Keiki Run, a 2-mile course that runs around the Blaisdell here, goes around McKinley High School. Road closures will be up to make sure that those Keiki remain safe. And joining me now with more on today's race is Joan Daniel Lee. Good morning, Joan. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's great to be here. This is an exciting event, isn't it?
It is. Now, you're one of the sponsors here for this race, but it's called the Keiki Run, not just for Keiki, though.
No, what makes 5210 Keiki Run so special is that it involves the students, the parents, we've got the schools, we've got businesses, we have the entire community out here, 1,500 strong on a Saturday morning out here to promote wellness, fitness, PE in our schools, health programs in our schools. This is a fundraiser also, and the money that's raised here is going to help have PE programs and health programs in our schools, which is so important to help our Keiki thrive.
Great. Thank you, Joan. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. And this dancing is going on until about 8 o'clock. 8:15 is the official start time for this race. Kavika Mu is here, Lani Mu. They'll be here for photo ops. So even if your child isn't registered for today's race, you can come take a picture with them. There's also a bicycle rodeo going on, being hosted by the Hawaii Bicycling League. And like Paul mentioned, that expo runs till 7 o'clock tonight. Keiki 12 and under are free, so come on down, have a good time. And of course, you're here to promote fitness. Live from the Blaisdell and Brandy Higa, KITV.
So Joy, is this an annual event then?
Yes.
Okay, and how are you involved in this?
So we provide sponsorship support, but more importantly, we work with schools, we work with community organizations, we work with other businesses to really make this a collective effort so that we can demonstrate that not only do we provide support, and together we're all responsible for promoting and championing health in Hawaii.
So what kind of feedback have you received for a program like this? And actually, how long has this program been going?
So it has been going on for about a few years. I want to say about 3 years or so. Great feedback. Communities have been very receptive. In fact, we are presently looking at how we could replicate this in other communities, particularly the neighbor islands where, we have schools and, inadequate or lack of transportation infrastructure. So lots and lots of needs. And so we're really excited to see how we are able to do that in the hopefully near future.
And I know that physical activities are really needed in schools. And just looking at my son's curriculum, right now he's in high school, there's really not much, and I think they really need to do a lot of that. Now, earlier on you mentioned the 5210 program, and I've seen that posters in schools. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Hawaii 5210 is an initiative that is actually it represents a broad partnership of healthcare organizations, nonprofit organizations, policymakers, and everyone working together to really help shape agenda around how we can have more healthy keiki and look at obesity prevention efforts, just to name a few among many. And so in the healthcare industry in particular, we all got together and we looked at ways in which we could support 5210 and its mission to, improve health in communities, in schools, and, also look at even addressing policy issues to see how we can, through policy efforts and changes, create, systemic changes and sustainable changes in our communities.
It's interesting too when you talk about community benefits. I always think about just community benefits, but I realize that you've tied it in with policy several times. So that's a critical part of your work too. So when it comes to policy work, what do you do? Great
question. So when we refer to the word policy, in our minds, it's a much more broader definition. It encompasses, of course, policies, looking at actually pursuing bills and, creating changes at that level. Going to the legislature. Going to the legislature, or it could even be at the county level, certain resolution. In fact, one quick example is one that last year we supported resolution 13-10, which is a city council resolution relating to promoting electronic, debit card for the EBT machines for food benefits in all city-run farmers markets. And so the policies could be at the state level, county level, but in addition to that, there are also policies or what we call institutional changes. So for instance, if within a school environment you have health champions, whether be it a wellness person or someone that is in charge of PE, and educators at large, just looking at ways to make schools a healthier place. And it could be through nutrition and physical activity, but it could also be through promoting presenteeism in schools, i.e. looking at reducing absenteeism. And so, making these institutional changes, changing behavior through organizational practices, are also part of the broader definition of what we refer to as advocacy efforts. Wow, I certainly don't think about that, the absenteeism, or you were talking about the other side, being present at school, but it all has to do with wellness and health of a child. You also talked about initiatives on the neighbor islands. Are there differences in terms of developing community programs over there as opposed to developing some of the programs here on Oahu? Absolutely. In the state of Hawaii, each county is very different, and so are the needs that we are faced with. So just to give you an example, in the Big Island, we recently helped with an initiative referred to as the Mayor's Active Living Advisory Council. And basically, it's a group of folks, representing the community. So we have health experts, businesses, community residents, community-based organizations. And it's a volunteer group that comes in and they do ideation, or they explore possibilities around how, health could be improved in the Big Island. And so that information is fed into the county planning process so that the county is able to pursue efforts. And we're very proud to share with you that one of the initiatives that resulted from the Mayor's Active Living Advisory Council was the institution of the Mayor's Bikeway Fund, which allows and promotes safe routes to school programs in the Big Island where we do not have a public transportation system. And so for the children, it's not just a question of how to get to school, but also to look at how to tie that in with promoting physical activity and doing so in a safe manner. And that's just an example. Whereas here on Oahu, we do Safe Routes to School program where the focus is more on the safety aspect of it, given that Hawaii is sadly one of the states with the lowest ranking with regards to safety standards when it comes to pedestrian and so forth. So it just goes to show how the same programs or the same benefits are deployed differently, tailored to the unique needs that are unique in each island, and they do vary. Wow, that must be really challenging. Well, we're coming up to a short break, but when we come back, I'm interested in learning more about, how do you get all these stakeholders to work together? My guest is Joy Barua. He is the Director of Community Benefits and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Jay Fidel. That's Ted Ralston. Ted is the host of Where the Road Leads. It shows every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. It's about technology. It's about how people collaborating and solve problems with modern technology. It's where the road leads. We all know that. We should all be listening. Join us there, 4 to 5 p.m. every Friday. Now, what about that do you agree with?
All of it.
I knew he'd say that. Aloha. Say aloha.
Aloha.
Good.
Welcome back. My name is Alice Li Hagan. You're watching ThinkTech Hawaii Biz Ed Spotlight. My guest is Joy Barua. He is the Director of Community Benefits and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. Before the break, we were talking about some of the exciting initiatives that Kaiser is developing here in Hawaii to promote health and safety, which is part of their core mission. Joy, you were talking about the Mayor's Active Living Council on the Big Island. I'm sorry, say that one again.
Sure, Mayor's Active Living Advisory Council.
Okay, now that's on the Big Island, and you were telling us too about how kids have, challenging access to get to school. But with all your initiative, you get a lot of different stakeholders together, nonprofit, private, public sector. And I know that that's not an easy thing to do. So what magic ingredient do you have to get them all work together?
Well, I do have to admit that, being in Hawaii and, working with, while you have the diversity of stakeholders, you also have, the spirit of aloha as your arsenal. And, and everyone brings that to the table. So it makes working and having conversations a lot easier. There are times when we disagree, but then, we look at it as ways to elicit feedback, to be respectful of each other, to listen. And then at the end of the day, it's sort of like a lei where even though we all represent diverse opinions and inputs, it's threading a lei, we are all connected in that same mission. And, I would offer that canoe analogy that is oftentimes, very commonly used here in Hawaii about leadership and so forth, where in a canoe, the person that leads is actually leading from behind, because the goal is for everyone on board to get to the destination. So when you're looking at leading, it's not necessarily leading from the front, but being cognizant of everyone that is on board and everyone playing an important and yet different role. And so that's just my way of sort of giving you a quick answer to what I have experienced to be sort of, something that helps us be successful.
And I'm sure that it helps to have you to facilitate the conversation if you can use these beautiful analogies about about threading leis and using canoe as an analogy for leading. No wonder you get things done. Now, you talk about leadership, and I was going to ask you this later on, but since you brought it up, you of course was or is still, or perhaps it was, a recent member of the Omidyar Fellow.
Yes, still am.
Oh, still am. So you haven't graduated yet?
Soon, very soon.
Okay. Well, maybe we can tell the audience about the Omidyar Fellow, if you don't mind, maybe just sharing what that's all about and how you got into this program, this very prestigious program.
Sure. The Omidyar Fellows Program is a leadership development program that is supported by Pierre Omidyar, who everyone knows is the founder of eBay. And the goal really is to look at how to nurture, cultivate, and support the next generation of leaders here in Hawaii. We're going through some major transformations, not just in the world, but here in the state as well. And so in that context of change and transition and all that lies ahead of us, it will require us to think about our challenges differently and in a very diverse fashion. So I'm very fortunate to be part of the Omidyar Fellows Program along with my other fellows. And each person brings something very unique to the table. We learn from each other, but at the end of the day, it's about, we're all united, even though we have different experiences, expertise, and so forth. In that, we're all collectively looking at how do we make Hawaii a better place.
Now, I know that it's a very competitive program, even though it had, I think they started the first cohort in 2012.
Correct.
It's a very competitive program, so how did you decide to compete to get into the program?
Well, that's a great question. Kaiser's president at the time encouraged me to apply. And to be honest with you, I had not known much about the program as I do today. And, I have nothing but positive things to say about the program. And so I went through the process. It was a very rigorous process, but one that was very educational. And I'm glad I made it.
Oh, well, I'm sure you made it with flying colors, but I guess in retrospect, after going through this 15-month program, how has that helped your work at Kaiser?
Great question. So the work I was doing in the past was very much, within, I don't want to use the word confines, but within the mindset of how do we improve communities, make communities a better place. The leadership, development opportunity that, I'm still going through with the Mid-Year Fellows program has helped me look at ways in which I could better myself, overcome my fears, or even realize fears I didn't have, overcome my discomfort in certain ways, and then look at, be able to think big, at the same time be able to execute what is required every day. So as far as my work at Kaiser, I would say that I'm able to look at things with a different lens now and just feel that, that has been a tremendous help, just being able to do that alone.
Okay. Now, you said that the program has helped you to identify fears that you don't have. Now, that piqued my interest, and what could that be?
We all have fears, and sometimes it's fear of failure or fear of just being paralyzed by uncertainty or just, having a bad day. It could be something as simple as that. So me personally, I would say that there are times where, just given my career in the nonprofit world, where, it's very hard and difficult to separate your heart from the work because, just the nature of the work itself, just to put it very obviously. And so, through my growth as a leader and through my work in the nonprofit sector, I have learned to be part of the work, at the same time isolate myself when necessary to play that role as a leader or a cheerleader at times, depending on what the situation calls for. So it's I would say it's less about overcoming fears, but having awareness around what those things are that hold you back, and then being able to modulate, moderate, and sort of manage that.
Wow. Now, then, what brought you into nonprofit? Because I guess at the beginning when I introduced you, and having looked at your bio, the bio says you have a diverse portfolio, and you've been in education, in healthcare, economic development sector. So you have a broad interest, and tell us where that came from.
I wish I had a magic answer. It just sort of happened along the way. I'm originally from Bangladesh, and I came to Hawaii during my teenage years, and not knowing at the time what I would do career-wise, I did decide to go to business school at Hawaii Pacific University, and it just so happened that my first internship and my first job ended up being in the nonprofit sector, and I just fell in love with it, and it was just something that that made me discover what it is that I had always in me, which is, just being genuinely caring and being able to allow that to manifest through the work I did. There's nothing more gratifying than that. And so I did discover that, and the rest was history, I would say. With regards to the different sectors, I would say that, just from the work I've done in the nonprofit sector, most of the work, at least during my first decade or so, happened to be in the world of economic development, working with small businesses, helping them access financing, which is always challenging because they're not able to access, just given some of the challenges they deal with. Working with the education sector in my role. So as you know, in nonprofits, we have to be very resourceful. We wear many hats, and I'm sure I'm not the only one saying this, because this is a pretty prevalent thing. This is how nonprofit organizations survive and do the work, by being resourceful and wearing many hats. So
do you still wear many hats?
I still do.
You do?
I, besides my full-time work at Kaiser, I also teach at Hawaii Pacific University, and it's something I've been doing for the past 12 years or so.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you because you were talking about, helping out with the economic development sector. I was looking at your bio. You actually received an award for that, for being the Small Business Advocate of the Year, and I think that was in 2010?
Correct.
So what was that, what did you do that led to that award?
Sure. So I think it would be unfair to assume all the credit, even though the award was given to me. But really, it was a combination of a lot of different things, looking at helping folks, as I was saying earlier, that are looking at starting a business and do not have access to the traditional means of financing, and looking at whether it be helping them go through the process, something as simple as you need a GET tax license to do business in the state of Hawaii, to imparting education around financial literacy, how to put a business plan together. So the work that was going on at that time in the world of business development led, Pacific Gateway Center, an organization that I was working at that time, to look at the possibility of developing a culinary business incubator. And so 5 years and $5 million later, which we had to raise to support this project, it was very, it was acclaimed as one of the most successful business incubators in the nation, because we had started over 120 businesses in a span of less than 2 years.
Wow.
And so it was very rewarding to be able to witness, there's the work that you envision, and to actually see vision transform to reality. And, that's what that award was all about.
Wow. So how's the project right now? Is it still ongoing?
Yes, it is ongoing, and, thriving as usual.
Huh. Now, you also mentioned that you teach at Hawaii Pacific University, you teach finance. So how, from dealing in nonprofit, and I know you mentioned you wear many hats, so teaching finance, that seemed to be very, very different.
Sure. So actually, just a correction perhaps. So it's, the College of Business Administration where I teach, and the courses I teach are entrepreneurship and small business management. But, finance is a part of it.
Yes, yes.
And so, again, it was one of those things that I didn't plan. It just happened. The opportunity presented itself. I did graduate from HBU, and so, it's just something that I started to do, and you just found out that I enjoy doing.
Now, when I first met you, you also told me a little bit about your family, and that actually really got my interest, because you mentioned you're from Bangladesh. Tell us about your involvement in nonprofit from long time ago. And I also know that you went to school in Japan. So how did that all happen?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, and as you know, I am from Bangladesh, and when I was 9 years old, in third grade, I was actually shipped off to a British boarding school in India, and I was fortunate enough to, score a scholarship to be able to do that. And then I did high school in Japan, and then came to Hawaii and to pursue my higher ed, college, undergrad, and grad. But, I guess rewinding back to, where I was, my family, we do a lot of social work, and we support a running of an orphanage, which feeds, clothes, and shelters over 15,000 kids. And so I did grow up with those kids. I don't come from a very well-to-do family. I've had very humble beginnings. My dad was a farmer, and their dream was for me to have a better life than one that they did. So, it's when we say nonprofit, today, in looking back, my parents always remind me that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it is part of my DNA. It's, my purpose in life. So I would say, even though I've been in different places, I've always found, the opportunity and enjoyed the opportunity to actually help people.
So is your family still doing a lot of these charity work then?
Absolutely.
Wow. And what do your parents say, knowing now that you are totally in nonprofit? As you said, the apple didn't fall too far from the tree. What else do they have to say?
Well, I'll tell you that, my parents are actually, I guess, at the expense of sounding stereotypical, I will say that they are sort of tough. And so they tell me it's not the end, but the beginning. So when I tell them that, hey, I've been in the industry for 20 years, they tell me that I'm still in elementary school. In other words, really, but with a good heart, they remind me that, the purpose in life is not just to earn a living, but when you're earning a living, there is purpose, and you have to find it. So I'm very fortunate that I have had the privilege of working in the industry, and now with my role at Kaiser, being able to support all the great work that I've witnessed firsthand. And so, I guess adding on to what my parents have already said, I have a renewed enthusiasm to see what lies ahead.
And I'm sure that's a different way for your parents to say that they're just really proud of you, I think. Well, we'll take our second break, and maybe when we come back, we can talk a little bit more about, what you envision that you would continue to do at Kaiser Permanente. Let's take a short break. My guest is Joy Barua. He is the Director of Community Benefits and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. We'll be right back.
I'm Hong Jiang, host for Asia in Review on Tuesdays.
And I'm David Day, host for Asian Review on Thursdays. Both of us broadcast our respective shows at 4 p.m.
And my topics tend to deal with questions related to environment, culture, history, and sometimes human rights.
And my shows tend to be on international business, foreign policy, geopolitics, and national security. And you can watch our shows live on the ThinkTech website at thinktechhawaii.com.
And you can also watch us on YouTube or Olalo.
So come join us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. I'm David Day.
And on Tuesdays at 4 p.m., I'm Hong Jiang.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, my name is Alice Li Hagan with ThinkTech Hawaii BizEd Spotlight. My guest today is Joy Barua. He is the Director of Community Benefits and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. Now, Joy, you talked about your international experience, and your family probably played quite a strong role in how they shaped you and how you got back into the nonprofit sector. You've done this for a long time, and I just thought about this question. Looking back, how has perhaps your perspective changed in terms of what you see in nonprofit as opposed to when you first started?
Sure. I would say that, as far as changing perception, it's, I'm more informed, having witnessed and, through the myriad of roles that I've held. And I have a greater and, sense of appreciation for folks that do so much with so little and yet do so in the service of others. Whether you're talking about a small organization or a large, very passionate, very committed people. And, we are, going through a very interesting phase of major changes, not just in the world, but here in Hawaii. And so, I look forward to seeing how that would affect the nonprofit industry, because they're constantly challenged with having to do more with less. And, my hope would be that, we can continue to find ways to support them, because they do very important work.
And you do. When you say major changes here, what may you be alluding to?
Sure. So there are many. I would say, again, and this is no surprise, in Hawaii we have one of the highest cost of living. Our education standard, we are looking at ways to improve that, look at retaining local talent, if you will, so that our children, as they grow up, or keiki, there are opportunities for them to stay here. The economy at large, and some of the things that are happening. And even if you look at basic things like food, we import more than 80% of everything we eat from outside. So from the standpoint of sustainability, whether you're talking about food or just independence, and looking at how Hawaii as a state can be self-sufficient, really the conversations are, there are many topics, but they all relate to how Hawaii can be a better place. So that's what I think of when I think of.
See, then now I can't separate. Is it because these are your own personal interests, or are these these interests? Can these interests be incorporated in some of the things or work or projects that you do at Kaiser?
I would say both. Definitely, I do, try to keep a pulse on and stay informed about and apprised about what's going on in our environment, because, if the work, which it is about improving lives, changing our communities, then you have to, stay informed and make sure that, even though you mean well, you want to make sure that any interventions or work, collaboration, partnership endeavor that you're looking at doing, you want it to be successful. And so, it's really not a question of if, but, really exploring or, digging deeper, if you will. And with regards to the issues, as I have laid them out, I think they're pretty common. They face us. The question is, how do we deal with them? And it's not just a question for any particular leader, but for all of us in our different roles here in Hawaii.
Now, we've been talking about you and the work at Kaiser, but we live on a small island, and I'm sure you work with a lot of other foundations too, and you mentioned about collaboration and partnership. Tell us some of those. And I know earlier on you mentioned you work with different stakeholders, but I'm curious, I mean, do you work with, say, foundation with Queens or HMSA, or even with some of the private sector foundations?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Hawaii is a small place, no doubt about that. And we have to work together because, the strength and our ability to, conquer and overcome our challenges really lies in our ability to work together. And that's part of what describes and defines Hawaii, very core to Hawaii's DNA, and Hawaii being that very special place. So on a number of initiatives, so just to give you one example, on the Hawaii 5210 initiative, we partnered with all the various healthcare organizations to look at different ways in which we could bring our, things to bear and contributions and kokua, whether it's through funding, in kind, or maybe we have thought leadership or expertise in a subject matter. And a more real example of that would be that with the Affordable Care Act, one of the requirements, regulatory requirements, is for all nonprofit hospitals to have to do a comprehensive community health needs assessment. And so here in the state of Hawaii, in partnership with Department of Health, Healthcare Association of Hawaii, Kaiser Permanente, and all of us here, all the hospitals here in Hawaii, we said that instead of doing the same assessment separately, we will all hui and pool our resources and do it together. And that seemed like a very ambitious goal, but we got it accomplished. And so it happened, and in fact, Hawaii is the only state in the entire nation, besides Rhode Island, that did a statewide collaborative community health needs assessment to meet ACA guidelines. More importantly, we're now working together to see how we could coordinate health philanthropy efforts and promoting our social mission. We may be in different geographies, we may be targeting different demographics, but we're united in the world of health. And so the question is, how can we better work together? And we're actually demonstrating that.
Oh, that's great. Yes, we're on a small island, but maybe because of that, people try to or tend to work together more closely. You talked about the Affordable Care Act and how it's affecting a lot of changes, especially in the healthcare sector. So is it perhaps affecting the mission of some of the work that you do?
Is it affecting? Absolutely, in a very positive and a good way. In fact, the Affordable Care Act, through the requirement for nonprofit hospitals to do a community health needs assessment, and then also to have a plan to make strategic investments that are more impact oriented, is, if anything, so there is obviously the flavor of greater accountability, greater scrutiny, but with that comes, the writing is very clear on the wall in terms of, collaboration will be the key to getting the work done. So, as far as the community benefit work that we have done historically and our track record at Kaiser Permanente in terms of, focusing on impact, delivering impact, and being really committed to health, now it's becoming a more prevalent phenomena. And that's a good thing. And it's good for Hawaii, good for everyone.
So what do you have in mind for, say, the next 2 years? What are some of the exciting initiatives or projects that you think you would be working on?
Great question. I would say that, I would continue on with, all the exciting opportunities and challenges that lie ahead, because, the calling is there in terms of, to look at how these challenges, these issues and needs are and can be addressed. Certainly we can, resources are important, but it's also important to manage, other resource needs, such as the importance of, educating communities, the importance of working with communities, the importance of looking at understanding folks, by having conversations with communities. So all of these things are important, and, given what I said earlier about how Hawaii, our landscape is changing, we will have to, do more of that. And so I look forward to, I guess signing up for being part of anything that has to do with improving Hawaii and making Hawaii a better place.
Well, I know you work with schools, and that seems to be a big part of it. Are there other target groups that you are looking at?
Target groups, I would say communities, particularly communities that have high health disparities. One quick example is in the Leeward area, we're currently working on a collective impact initiative where we're working with physicians, we're working with schools, working with nonprofit organizations, the clinic there, and that's just a few among many stakeholders to look at how do we bring in our own unique, diverse resources, but bring it all together to collectively solve, if you will, or at least address in the near term ways in which we can address obesity. So if you're a school, it's to look at having better wellness guidelines. If you're a community clinic, looking at the ways to improve and enhance perhaps your practices with greater quality. So the list goes on, and it's just fascinating in terms of what's possible when you have people coming together and uniting to do something for a common good.
Well, we do have a short video about obesity. Maybe producer, if you can roll that last video for us. That's the one at the Leeward side, the one that you work with some of the schools to address obesity issues, right? Okay.
Working together to fight childhood obesity here, students and staff from Kaneohe Elementary School are taking part in a Playworks Recess pilot program. It's funded by Kaiser Permanente, Hawaii, and aims to increase physical activity through fun recess playtime, but also teaches kids cooperation and fair play amongst each other.
After implementing Playworks, what we see is fewer students are standing on the side of the playground and apprehensive, not knowing what to do, but instead it gives them the confidence, it gives them the structure to jump right in. And oftentimes, when they engage in this physical activity, sometimes that may lead to a conflict, but Playworks also teaches them how to resolve those conflicts in a more productive fashion. So it really teaches them problem-solving skills, which extends the learning that's going on in the classroom.
Kaneohe Elementary is just one of 9 Hawaii elementary schools taking part in Playworks. The pilot will be extended to other schools in the upcoming school year.
Joy, so you were telling me this, the way to address obesity, you're trying to promote physical activities. Can you clarify that a little bit for us?
Sure, absolutely. So the video, that's just on the screen is actually an example of many obesity efforts that we're involved with and looking at testing and expanding in schools. So this particular one is about Playworks, which is a model, if you will, an evidence-informed model that shows that has proven to be a best practice, if you will, in terms of looking at how do you promote physical activity in schools. And so what we did was last school year, we were able to pilot this in about 10 plus schools in the Windward area, in the Castle Kahuku complex. And so the goal was to not, introduce the tool as a one-size-fits-all, but rather work with educators in each of the schools to see how this tool could be used to tailor physical activity during recess in very low or no cost ways so that it could be sustainable. And so we're happy to report that the program has been very successful, so much so that we have other schools that are really interested in looking at how to replicate the model.
Well, I do look forward to hearing more about some of the exciting community programs you have. Now, if there are two things that the community, or I should say, if there are two things that you want to share with us, something that people don't know much about Kaiser, what would that be?
Well, one definitely would be the fact that we have, besides the fact that we're the best, the fact that we're a nonprofit organization, I don't think it's as widely known. And the second and more important one is the fact that our social mission is one that is not separate from our mission core. It is very much part of our mission and DNA. And one of the things I love to share and tell people, being a Kaiser member myself, is the fact that we do have excellent care, and quality is just something that is part of many things we do great. And so when you mix the science of medicine with the art of care, you get a taste for what I call the Thrive cocktail, or a taste for Kaiser Permanente medicine. And I'm really proud to be part of Kaiser Permanente.
And that's a wonderful way to end our interview. Thank you so much, Joy, for being on our show.
Thank you for having me, Alice.
My guest here is Joy Barua. He is the Director of Community Benefits and Health Policy at Kaiser Permanente. You've been watching ThinkTech Hawaii BizEd Spotlight. Stay tuned for a more exciting program next week. Aloha.